a chance. Telling me to dance, taking a chance.
I just love that.
I love that. I know Diana did such a great job on that.
Good. I just sit here and bop along. And,
I know.
Me too. Our theme song.
yes,
Everyone needs a theme song.
Yes. Well, welcome everyone to the Isn't It Romantic Book Club. We're going to be discussing the lost book of Eleanor Dare tonight.
I'm so excited.
Wow, wasn't this so good?
It was great.
It was really wonderful.
I love me some Sonder, that's for sure.
Oh, no.
I'm Abbie Roads. If you don't know me, I write dark romantic thrillers. I tell people think an episode of Criminal Minds meets a love story with a little paranormal twist. I have a little list or a little stack of books here. My latest one is Capturing Fate. It's available now. And I just finished a book on Sunday.
Oh,
congratulations.
Wow. What are you telling us about? That's like a super secret.
I'm not going to talk about it yet. I think it's going to be like 3 books, and I've got 10,000 words written on the new book, the second book in the series. So I'm just not really going to talk too much about it yet.
That's wonderful.
So I just want to welcome everybody here, especially all of those of you who are watching us from the Isn't It Romantic Book Club Facebook page, from Team Source Books, from My Dangerously Dark Darlings, from Midnight in the Garden. We're going to be beaming in live to YouTube. We're at Jennie's Page Turners, and we'll probably be on a podcast soon. So welcome, everyone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Diana Muñoz Stewart. I write romantic suspense for the strong of heart. I've got a pile of my books right here. My most recent is Broken Promises. I have my Black Ops Confidential series. And I am so happy to be back with you. I missed last time. I missed you guys, so I'm happy to be back.
We're happy you're back too. We had some technical issues.
We started it like 3 times because I couldn't figure out how to actually go live after the little fun intro.
I was popped up in the group a couple of days later, and I was like watching you guys. You guys did a good job, though. You did a really great job.
We missed our fearless leader.
We did. We really did.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm Jennie Marts, and I write small town stories with humor and heart. I write a kind of genre mix from cozy mysteries to my feel-good stories from Hallmark Publishing. Gosh, my brain stopped working for a second. And I also write Hot Cowboys for Source Books. So this is my newest book. This one right here. Man, you guys have no idea how hard it is to do this.
I find if you don't watch yourself, just watch the book. It's easier.
Yeah, it's easier.
Somebody should have told me that trick.
Sorry.
Yeah. So my newest book is coming out next month from Hallmark. It's Cowboy Ever After, and I don't have one yet. I'm waiting for them to send me an arc. So anyway.
Oh, I thought it was Never Enough Cowboy. It's Cowboy Ever After.
Cowboy Ever After is from Hallmark. It comes out in June, and then in July, Never Enough Cowboy comes out. Okay. So all sorts of cowboys coming for you this summer. Your summer can be full of hot cowboy reads.
Oh, I can't wait. My name is Sharon Wray, and I write romantic suspense. A bunch of books here. My newest one, Love's Last Kiss, just came out last week. And I also write steamy contemporary short stories that are coming out starting in the fall. So I'm very excited. I am thrilled that we're having Kimberly Brock on today. Kimberly and I met many, many years ago before we were published. We were both absolutely determined to be published, and yet at the same time thought we'd never be published. So if you're a writer, you understand what that feels like. Kimberly is the award-winning author of The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare and The River Witch. She is the founder of Tinderbox Writers Workshop and has served as a guest lecturer for many regional national writing workshops, including at the Pat Conroy Literary Center. She lives near Atlanta with her husband and her 3 children. Here's her book, The River Witch. If you haven't read it, it's probably one of my all-time favorite books. At least I thought that until I read The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare. So without further ado, we'd love to have Kimberly join us.
Welcome. Hi.
Oh, we're so happy you're here today.
Thank you.
I'll just tell the audience, Kimberly's been traveling all over the Southeastern United States since April. It seems like every day a new city, a new bookstore. and teas and parties and all sorts of as glamorous as it sounds, I also know it's absolutely exhausting.
Yeah, I'm tired. I'm such an introvert. A couple of days ago, I looked at my calendar and I realized I had 3 days where I didn't have to leave my house. I did not have to hot roll my hair, y'all. And I nearly cried. I was like, I am so done with the pageant tour. I was so glad to just stay home and be ugly for a while. So,
well, for those of us who are extroverts, it is my dream of the world to go on a book tour. So,
you know what? It's been wonderful. It's fun, and I really like it while I'm there. But I was 50 in January, and I realized my batteries go flat, like lots faster than they used to. I love the teaching part of it. I love speaking. I love that I'm getting to go back into bookstores and getting to meet readers is the best part of this to me. But man, the driving and just the hair and makeup. Like, that's the part. If I could just roll in with no hair and makeup like I used to do in my 30s, I'd do it all day long. But now it's like an ordeal, right, to get ready. There's a lot of spackle involved.
Well, when I heard this book was coming out, I was so happy because I remember, I think it was 2012 when we were at Georgia together at the Maggie's.
Yep.
And I read a very early version of this book.
Yes,
and
you did.
I have been waiting for this book for a long time.
You and me both, sister.
2012? You wrote this book 10 years ago?
Well, she started an early draft, and you had been working on it for a while too.
Even before that, if you want to know a secret, I've known this. It's not really a secret. Everybody I've talked to knows this already. I learned the history of the Dare Stones when my now 21-year-old son was in pull-ups.
Wow.
So yeah, like a long time ago. I've been like in the crock pot of my brain trying to figure out how to write about it. So
how much research did you do for this book?
A lot.
10
the
years?
The weird part is it's not all what you would expect. Like people want to know, well, what research did you do? It's about the lost colony. There's not a lot to know. So more of the research was this random path that I had to take for kind of how women moved through American and even pre-revolutionary history, and where these descendants might have ended up depended a lot on that, not necessarily research about the lost colony. There's only so much to know. And then there's a lot of speculation, which is kind of fun to tootle around with, but I wanted my own idea about that. So,
right. I assume there's some historical.
Sorry, Diana.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to know, are the stones real?
Oh yeah, they are. So I can tell you this. So the way I found out about these, and Sharon, you may remember some of this. I don't remember. It's been so long. I don't expect you to remember this, but I grew up in North Georgia, and then we moved to Seattle when we first got married, and we were there for about 4 years. And then we moved to North Carolina. We had never even been to the town in North Carolina. I had not even seen it. And I had a 9-month-old daughter, and I was surprised, found out I was pregnant with my son while I was packing to move. And we moved to this town I'd never even been to. Had my son there, 9 months apart. And I was kind of isolated because I didn't really know anybody in where I was living yet. And I had these 2 little kids, and the internet was kind of new. And that's how I wrote my first book. So I was researching for stuff for the River Witch, for just Appalachian history, because I have a grandmother in that book that I wanted to be really rooted in her community. And so I'm on the internet while my kids were taking naps, right? That's how we all start, isn't it? They sleep, you imagine a whole different world. And I ran across this article, and I knew about the lost colony. Growing up, I think the more people I talk to, the more I find out really, I think it may be more kids who've grown up on the eastern part of the United States, maybe Midwest. Some of the people I talk to who've grown up out west don't necessarily know the history of the lost colony of Roanoke. But I can remember like 4th or 5th grade learning about it. And I was that kid that, like, if it was a room or a cabinet or a trail you weren't supposed to go down, that's where I was at and in trouble for it. I wanted to know. So a story about 115 people that just poof disappeared, no end to that story. I remember that. I wanted to know. It always bugged me. And I always thought, yeah, somebody's lying. So I was immediately interested when I saw this article, but what thrilled me was that it linked the lost colony history to the state I was from Georgia. And I thought, oh, so I sat and I read this article, and when I was finished with it, I was furious because I knew nothing about it. And it was something I should have known about and I didn't know about, and that hooked me. That's what I couldn't get over it. I was obsessed with it. So I don't know, about a year after that, maybe, we moved back to Georgia. And I hopped in my car, and you can make an appointment. The Stones are all housed at Brenau University, which is about an hour from where I grew up, about an hour from where I live now. And they don't make a lot of noise about them because they're kind of an embarrassment to the college. They were all debunked and declared a hoax. And so they stored them for a while under a stage at the school in a dirt floor electrical room because there's literally tons of them. The first one, nobody's ever been able to say whether it's authentic or not. And so it really appealed to me. I wanted to see it. And I made this appointment. I went up there, and this little lady was sitting in this archive room in the library by herself. And she let me in. And, if you look them up, if you Google it, they're like History Channel stuff. And it's always kind of like searching for Sasquatch and the Dare Stone. It's kind of a joke. It's not. And so I'm sure they get all kinds of interesting people showing up to look at these things and people who want to write a story. So, of course, I wasn't saying, hello, I'm an author. I just walked in to see it. And she lets me in, and I stand there to look at it, and I was really excited to see it just because it was such a weird thing I wanted to see. And I started to cry. And that poor little woman looked at me like, honey, we're going to have to. And I felt bad. I was like, I'm sorry. I'm not crazy. I promise. And I went and I sat in my car, and I thought, why am I so upset? I couldn't figure out why I sat there and cried. And it took me a while to realize that I didn't care if it was real. I didn't care if it was true. I didn't care if she had really carved it or she had somebody carve it. I was remembering her of it. And so it was part of her story now. And that was true. And if you know anything about the Lost Colony, Eleanor was the governor's daughter. They landed where they weren't supposed to land. They were ditched by the ship's captains, and then they ran out of supplies fairly quickly. She had her child. She was pregnant on the way. And
that's all true.
Yeah, this is the true part. And her father baptized the baby and then left for England. They voted him off the island, y'all. I don't think he was a great leader. They sent him back to go get supplies. And then he was unable to return for 3 years because they were at war with Spain and they were in need of the ships. And when he came back, there was nobody there. And the Dare Stone, I feel like I'm talking a lot. There's just so much history.
This is great.
No, but it's fascinating hearing.
But we know that part. The Dare Stone was found in 1937, about 50 miles inland from where Roanoke Island was at in North Carolina. Now North Carolina, then called Virginia. People get confused, but it's North Carolina history at this point. So in North Carolina, he stops on the side of the road on vacation with his wife, and he trips over this big rock. And 1937 was the end of the Depression. So everybody was looking for a way to make a buck. And there were lots of spectacles, and like it was Barnum's big heyday. And so he looked at this thing and he thought it might be worth something. He couldn't read it. Had an inscription on it he couldn't read, but he threw it in his trunk. And they went on their way. And they came down into Georgia, down into Atlanta, to Emory College. And he took it in to Emory College and flunked it down and said, "So what do you think? Is it worth anything?" And they lost their minds. And for the next couple of years, everybody was excited. It was all over the news. Lots of experts came to look at it. They thought it was Elizabethan English. And the initials EWD were inscribed on the stone, Eleanor White Dare. And it said there had been a massacre. It was a message to her father. Said she had survived, her husband and child had been killed. And basically it was saying, "Come find me, Dad." It also referenced another stone that would have been a gravestone. So one of the professors there, his dad was the president at Brenau University. And they took the stone there to further research and to try and go find that other stone. And then they put out the word and they said, "So if you find any more of these stones with these carvings, we'll pay you." So
there you go.
Every creek and barn. I mean, people. So for the next couple of years, there were 48 stones that were found, and they told a story for Eleanor that led her conveniently down through South Carolina, down into Georgia, right past Brenau, down into Fulton County, Georgia, right down the road from where I live now, where she supposedly died in a cave. And I thought about all of that. The Saturday Evening Post sent a reporter, and he debunked the whole thing as a hoax. They said that they had been in cahoots with the guy that carved all of these other stones. But like I said, the first one, nobody, even with all the testing and research they've done, has ever been able to say whether it's real or not. And I sat there and thought about that day. And I thought, if I had been Eleanor and I'd been 19,
Yeah.
I'm almost 20 when I was born, and everything I had ever loved, everybody I had ever loved, everything I'd ever known, what it's like standing on the East Coast on the beach. You're at the edge of the world. Do you think you'd have been standing there thinking, "Wow, this is all going to work out. I'm going to make it"?
No, I don't think so.
No, and I don't think that was the message. I think she just wanted to be remembered.
Wow.
And so that's what I did. And I thought, if I had a daughter, maybe she had another daughter. The stones say that she did. I kind of ditched all of that. Like the first stone, I kept that as the idea. But the rest of them and that whole story, they say that she lived for several years in North Georgia and married an Indian king and had another daughter. And then they kicked her out because she'd had a daughter with the king. And that's how she wound up in the cave. And I thought, didn't that just sound like a story a man would make up? And so I didn't use that, but I like the idea of another daughter, that maybe she was pregnant again. That's very reasonable to think at that point. It had been several years since her father had disappeared and she'd had a child. So I liked that. And I thought, if I wanted to be remembered and a story was passed down in this family, I imagined all of the generations down to the generation after the stones had been dismissed as fake, because that's who it would have mattered to. If it was your family story, you would want to know if it was true or not. And I knew 1591 was on the stone, so that's when the stone was carved. And I knew it had been found in 1937. And I started wondering, where'd that sucker been all the time? Had it just been sitting there on the side of the road, or had it mattered to somebody else, and who that would have been? So the main part of the book is set right at the end of World War II, right after the stones were debunked.
The other thing I love, Kimberly, is that you actually didn't deal with the whole Croatoan thing. Like,
No.
it's all people think about for the
I
most
know.
part. And so I love that wasn't even an issue.
It wasn't. This is going to sound, this is revealing about me, I guess. I don't care. I didn't care so much about that. I cared about her, and the little bit that I knew from that stone was more what I was interested in. And the rest of it seemed like such a man's story. I wanted to know Eleanor's story and what she would have known. And I also think I like the idea, maybe this is a woman's brain. I don't know. But people do lots of things. They don't have to do just one thing. Like just one thing didn't have to happen to these people. And if I know anything about people, especially after the last few years, we don't agree on anything. So the minute that her dad left, there must have been like 15 different plans, 50 different, like a church split where everybody decided this, because they're in a panic. Things are not going well. You know, they're not on a cruise. This is not happy time on the island. And so I think a lot of the speculations that we have about what happened to the Lost Colony are probably all true in one way or the other, bits and pieces. And I just took what the stone said and decided to go from there. So.
And where did the idea for the book come up, and the pass down and the recipes and the tips?
Right. I'm a chicken, and I wrote the whole 1945 thing and sent it in to my agent. And she said, "This is fabulous. I love it. Now where's the rest?" Because I did not write Eleanor's story at all. And she wanted that. And I said, "Nope, not going to do it. Sorry. It's none of my business. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate about that. It feels like I'm stomping across graves in a graveyard." I didn't have the confidence in myself. Number one, I think, is really what it came down to. But I don't know. I felt really like I was, it wasn't my place somehow. I just felt icky to make something up about her. I felt like so many things have been made up about her. I didn't want to do that to her again. And my agent said, "Well, then what's the point of the book?" I thought the whole point of the book was, you know, that you wanted Eleanor not to be forgotten. And I thought, damn it. And I tried to write it like, you know, how most historical fiction right now, really popular historical fiction, is dual timeline. And you have that very, you know, here's one timeline and here's the other, and go hand in hand. And I tried that, and y'all, it was so boring. It was awful. This was like pilgrims, and you know, I didn't care, and I thought nobody else is going to care. Why? So I put it away, and that's probably, I mean, that took me a while. That was like 6 weeks of, I'm not doing this. This is crap. And then one night, in the middle of the night, I woke up. It was 2 a.m, and I could hear it in my head, and it was not at all what I've been trying to do. Am I crazy? Do y'all do that sometimes?
No, I totally, yeah.
It's always so inconvenient, like you're driving or you're in the shower or it's the middle of the night. It's when you let your brain not work. It does something, and so it churns something out. And I could hear it. And I sat up in bed, and my husband said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "It's a mother." He said, "What?" Go back to sleep. And I got up and I wrote some stuff down, and I got up the next morning and I started working on it. It came pretty quick. It took me about 6 weeks, I think, to write all of Eleanor's tale.
Wow.
It was a mother. It was, who would be telling this story? Who tells the story of Eleanor to the next person? It's a mother. So it's her mother to her to her daughter to her daughter. And the way that your mother tells you a story, first of all, it's not always true, right? Or it's not always all true. It's parts of things that you need to hear when you need to hear them, when our mothers tell us our family stories.
Yeah.
So I thought, it's like a game of telephone. And they pass down the parts they think are important. And it's an oral history, so it's not always the same as it goes along. And so I thought, what would contain that? First of all, the storytelling, but then I grew up in a house that was built in 1912, which felt like it was built out of stories and lives. We had people that would come to the door because they'd been born in the house. And in our foyer, we had a family photo of us. And then on one side was my dad's family going back 10 types and farther. And then on the other side was my mom's side of the family going back. And my dad would stand there with us and he'd say, these are your grandparents. And that's his mom and daddy. And that's her mom and daddy. And that's the one that left her, that SOB. And here's the other one. You know, we'd stand there and hear their stories and see them. And my friends always liked to come over and look at that. And that was in my brain. I was thinking, I can remember standing there and thinking, I just wish I knew their stories. Like, I wish I knew the things about. And the same with this house I grew up in. We'd find like an old shoe or a milk bottle because it was a dairy at one time. And they were like little clues to what this place had been and who had been there. And that's where the idea of the book came from. Because I thought, the stone feels like that to me too. I think the reason I don't care if it's true or not, when you've lost somebody, what you would give for a message or for a story or that one thing that you wish they told you, and I don't think you'd care if it was true. You just want the connection to them, right? So the book is all of that. To me, it's how women pass their secrets and their histories and their stories, because you don't find those things in written history very often. It's very much a man's game until very recently, and still we're sneaking it in, you know, in all these ways in our recipes and the way we sew our clothes for our kids, or the way we planted our gardens, or how we kept them alive. I mean, that was women's business, and all those things often went into what was called a commonplace book. And so, which I think is hilarious. It's common, right? Because so there it is. And it seemed like the perfect way to kind of sneak that in for this little girl to find, and for Alice, her mother too, to understand who they are.
I loved it. I thought that was fantastic. And I think it's interesting how Saunders is also getting bits of information that might not be true, that he's hearing on the radio and that he's putting out there into the world as well. So that is a recurring theme.
Yeah, I like some Saunders.
So do we.
We all did.
That's the romance. I like a quiet romance, obviously. He was interesting to write too, and that idea of those POW messages and how that sketchy information, people come at it differently. You know, people are afraid of things that they can't know to be true or certain. And then sometimes it doesn't matter. You just need the information, regardless of what you can make of it. And I thought that was a good way to draw that parallel. And he comes at it from a different perspective because of his past. Plus, I gave him a cupola. I mean, I'm a Southern woman. You need a cupola and a man in the cupola. That sounded good to me. So I made that thing up, y'all. I totally made up the house. And I had written the whole first part of the book was written. And when I started, I had it set in North Georgia because of that story on the stones. And I thought, well, I'll go up there and see this little area near Helen, Georgia, and see what I can make of it. And this is weird, I'd been at the eye doctor, and there was a picture on their wall of a church. And I thought, that looks kind of like this little church that I've made up. And they said, well, that's in Helen, Georgia. And I said, no way. So I got in the car to go up and see it. And I went up there while my youngest was in I guess preschool. It was like daycare, and I knew I only had this little window of time, and I had to drive like a bat out of hell to get all the way up there and back to pick him up in time. So I knew I was just going to go up and turn around. And I had never been there. And I get up there to see this little church, and I come over the hill and into the valley where Eleanor was supposed to have lived. And there sits this big white house with a cupola on the top. And all that hair on my body stood up. And I was like, no way, no way, no way, no way, no way. And it was totally, at the time, empty. It's since the state has bought it, and it's a park. You can go through it, and I have. And there's this cupola on top of this house. And I'm like, no way. And the church is on the property. I swear I'm not making this up. And I was like, well, okay, Eleanor. But I feel like it was in the right place. And so that's why I moved it into Savannah, especially after just kind of was talking about the history of how women might have moved and where that family might have settled. And so I moved it to Savannah for creative reasons. And I'm happy with it, but that still creeps me out. And there's
I think that's great.
Where
you know,
did
the
the
word
name Evertell come from?
Oh,
Evertell.
Evertell is like, I think, are you all here in the South? I'm not sure where you're at.
No.
Where
I've
are
never
you?
even been to the South.
I'm in Virginia. I don't know what people consider that anymore.
I'm in Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I'm in Colorado.
You're in Colorado. Where?
Ohio.
Ohio. So to me, writing about the South is very complicated because I love it and I hate it. It's like an abusive parent that you just adore. You know, there's like really good memories. There's a lot about it I love. And I don't think I'd be happy anywhere else, but it's also horrible. When I try to explain to somebody what the South is, I think it's our origin in this country. First of all, this is an origin story. So that's another reason I kept it in the South. Think of the South as like a big haunted house, right? I think we tell so many stories in the South, and maybe there's more that we don't. And it's this big, empty, cavernous thing that has held all of this history, and Evertell became that to me. I think it's always telling on us, you know. Our stories here in the South are always revealing us somehow. And so that's how I think of it. And it's also about these women in a sweet sense. It's informing them about who they are, and your home, whatever that is, whether it's a place or a person, it tells you who you are. And that's what this place is doing for them. So that's where Evertell comes from. And that was the title, by the way.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Well, I absolutely, I mean, I loved Sonder, absolutely loved him. I mean, besides Alice, but I also loved her daughter, Penn. And you just nailed that age. So how did you decide? I mean, she was a perfect age for the book. But I guess being a mother of a daughter who's past that age now, I mean, how hard was it to nail down that character and how old she was and the contrariness of that age? They love you, they hate you. It's too much love, but it's not enough love. But
how much freedom do I give them? How much do I hold them back? Like,
exactly.
Yeah, right.
So hard.
I don't know. I think one group that I talked to, one of the things that it's kind of funny when you are finished with a book and you get to talk about it like this, you sort of figure it out along with the people that are interviewing you. You're like, oh yeah, I was really brilliant right there. Wow, I didn't know I did that. It's interesting how it kind of all comes together. And the more I talk about it, the more I understand what I was doing. I did this in my first book too. And I don't know why I am still doing it, but I like writing a young girl about that age. And some of it is me, is who I am. Some of it is my kids. Some of it is kids. I was a special needs teacher before I had my kids. Some of it is that. I still think like that a lot, though. I mean, I don't know about you guys as grown women, but I still find myself thinking like I did at that age a lot because I was contrary. I had a lot of questions. I was a curious girl. I was in trouble. I was in the wrong place a lot. I wasn't a bad kid. I was just into it.
Curious.
Yeah. And so I like a character that wants to know the workings of the things around them or the people around them. And in particular, for this book, some of the things that these two are confronting in their family history, again, is Southern history, right? Or American history. And they are hard things to confront. And I felt like I could do it most honestly through a 13-year-old child's perspective. Because I feel about 13 years old when I try to confront a lot of those things. I feel like that may be my level of understanding for a lot of very complicated parts of our history. Just starting to try and unravel it and figure it out. Even if I've been thinking about it for 50 years, it's not, if it's not your experience, you're that far behind. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it gave me a level of innocence there to contemplate through.
It was a fresh perspective. I think that it worked beautifully. It really did.
I hope so. And I had sensitivity readers for things, thank the Lord. And I tried really hard to let Alice deal with what Alice was dealing with and let Penn see more of the big picture. So.
And was there any pushback with your editor about any adding or not adding any of the history?
Well, yeah, I mean, I had some things that I tweaked and pulled out of the book, and I may use them in other stuff because I could. For this one, I did the same thing with River Witch. I had a whole arc for another secondary character that came out of this book that just wasn't necessary. So I don't know if those people will show up a lot. I think they kind of show up in different ways. Like for River Witch, I had a secondary character who sort of morphed into Imogene in this novel. Got a little bit more of her there. And I think people always ask me if I'm going to write a sequel to stuff. And I think I'm always writing the sequel somehow. I think writers have one thing in their, the seed of them that they're writing about underneath everything. And then you populate a world and the seed is the thing at the center. And you see what they do with it to try and make sense out of it for yourself. And you get to the end of their story, and that's as much sense as they can make out of that thing for you. And if you're not done with that thing, then you put it in another book and you scatter some more people and see what they do with it. So
that's
when
brilliant.
I finish the book, that's as far as those people can go for me to figure out whatever it is I'm trying to figure out. So I did that with this one too. So yeah, there's stuff that we pulled, but it wasn't a particular history that we tiptoed around. No.
Well, I absolutely love the River Witch, but I have to tell you, I was worried for Sonder.
I promised everybody. I was like, I promise.
I'm not going to spoil it. But I was a little worried. And as I'm falling in love with him, I'm like, oh God, oh please, Kimberly. Please. Be kind.
You got your romantic ending for this one.
Yes, definitely. I have to say I also loved just the aspect of Eleanor being a printer and the copper plate. I mean, it was just such a lovely way to tie the history of Eleanor's life through her ancestors and the candle making of her mother, like the light and the darkness. How did you come up with that? That was really beautiful.
I don't know. Maybe I got drunk on that. I think it's that kind of tiptoeing through the tulips thing that you do when you're on the internet and you just find these weird little things. And all of that digging around in women's history, one of the things, there's nothing about Eleanor Dare. All we know about her is she was a girl. She got married. She had a baby. She disappeared. And I thought, isn't that the way of, everybody's story? But the details of her are that we know she was a girl in London. We know that her mother and a young infant brother died. And that left her and Dad. And Dad was a limner. He was a painter. So he did miniature portraits. And he was apparently pretty talented at it. And then when Mom died, Dad hit the road, like literally to other worlds. He left the known world. That's a long way to go and leave your daughter with herself. So what is she going to do with herself? And you have no way of knowing who is with her, how alone she is or not. Pretty alone, no matter who was around, I would say. And so I started looking at, well, where was she? Where were they located? We kind of have a sense of where she was at because we know what church she was married in. And he was off creating his watercolors, and I just thought, and he was a map maker, and I thought that was what she looked at and thought mattered to Dad. So it would matter to her. She'd be trying to figure out how to make herself into that thing that would bring him home somehow, or get her a way to go with him. And there was a printer down the street. And I thought about me and how I would be into things. I'd be asking the questions. And I don't necessarily think Eleanor had a choice about her life, where she went, what she did. But if she had had the choice, I don't think she would have made a different one, because you're always going to choose love. And she would have wanted her father to love her, right? So it seemed like if she loved the things that he loved, if she could make herself useful to him, if she could just get him to look at her or take her with him, that would be all she would have wanted. And that would have been an avenue for that. So and when I was researching that to bring it back, I found an article about women in printmaking, early printmaking. Often the printers behind the scenes. Their husbands' names were on the business. The women were actually.
That was a great detail. Yeah.
That was wonderful.
And so I was like, yep, not a big secret, folks.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Diana.
So do you do a lot of outlining, or is your research, you just do all the research and then let it kind of boil out when you write? Like
both. I do it all at the same time, I think. Like I outline and then I outline more and then I write something and I outline that. It doesn't always, hold together. It's like a process all the way through to the end. And I just have a bunch of crap printed out and tucked away, and I'm kind of like a pack rat while I'm in the middle of it, and then it all sorts out in the end. I know which images I like and which things I can pull in and use, and I don't ever use all of it. I try. The genealogy and stuff, when my agent said, so where's the rest of it? But she said, I know this is all in your head. You know it. It's not on the page, but I can tell it's there. It's supposed to be here, and it's not. So what do you have in your head? And she was right, because I had imagined all 16 generations. I had made genealogy charts with all of their first, middle, last names and their children, how many children and where they had been and what they had been doing. Just little notes, but like a whole thing of it. And I am not a math person, y'all. I can barely get my chapters numbered correctly. My poor agent and her assistant so many times are like, Kim? But I had done that and gone through and figured out, well, how old could they have been and how long might they have lived? And So I do all that, and I do have it all kind of all written down, and it's crazy town, but it's this messy sort of process. I know when I'm in it. I know when it's working, and I know when it's not, but I can't necessarily recreate it. And it's very intuitive, like it's a shape. I know when the shape of the thing feels right, the balance of it feels right to me. And I'm thinking colors. I see people in colors and places in colors, so the color of it has to feel right to me too. That was part of changing the North Georgia setting to Savannah.
And the peacocks, speaking of the color, like the peacocks, where did the peacocks come from? Because that was
Flannery O'Connor kept peacocks. And my daughter went to college at her alma mater, and then we go down there and visit, and her little farm is there where she had her peacocks, and they have the peacocks shed their feathers in the fall, I believe it is. And I had my daughter go in the gift shop and buy some of the feathers for me, so I have them in my office. And I knew that I wanted something contrary that Alice was going to have to deal with. I wanted an animal that was going to be contrary there on the farm, because it's so representative of her relationship with her mother. It's your mother, your relationship with your mom. She's beautiful. You love her. She's horrid. She just won't leave you alone. And I mean, like all of the contrariness of her relationship with her mom, and the mystery of her, not being able to understand who she was, and she's flamboyant and weird and wonderful. There are worlds to her that Alice is trying to understand. And so there's those birds, there's those peacocks and their feathers, and I don't know, they're kind of a little spectacle walking around there. So I liked them.
I love them. Kimberly, what do you have a favorite scene?
A favorite scene?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's terrible. I've never thought of it.
Maybe one that came easily and didn't need much rewriting.
And we have some comments too. People are asking questions in the comments. Maybe Abbie could
I still really love, and it's why I had them put in the front matter, those first lines of Eleanor's tale about the mysteries of the world, because that's what I think this book is really about. I think this book is about forgiveness, but I think at its heart, it's about love and mystery. And I think that's all the same thing. Like, I hope when somebody picks this book up, I don't want you to read this book because you want the answer to the lost colony. I want you to read it and put it down and think, oh, I'm so glad there's things we don't know. Because it makes the world beautiful, and you're never going to know everything about your mother. You're not supposed to. And that's what makes your love for your mother and her love for you a wonder, a mystery, a miracle. And for all the people in your life that you love and have lost, what comes next when you're standing there and you have to walk away from that stone, or you're standing at the edge of the map. Can it be okay that you don't know everything, and still find mystery and wonder and love in the world? That's my favorite.
I love that. That's beautiful.
That's great.
so much.
I know.
Well, and I think the book was just overall just beautifully written.
Thank you.
Just the way you string the words together is beautiful. Like the imagery, I just built it all in my head, had the whole thing there.
Oh God, I wish I could go to Evertell. Everybody's always saying, is it real? Is it there? No, it's not. And it is too. Savannah is very much all of that. You can find Evertell around every corner there, I think. And Bonaventure Cemetery is really there. And the riverfront is really there. And Bridie, the woman with the shop, is named after one of the first African-American female business owners in Savannah. those elements are there. So I hope people will visit and see that for themselves. Not in August, but come.
But something that I always love about reading historical books is like this is it's like I'm learning new things, but I don't know how to say it. It's not like a textbook learning. It's like a fun
story.
Learning. Yeah, and it's through the story that I learn this stuff. And I just
that's why we remember the history of the lost colony, because it's a story. When people tell you that history, it's a ghost story, right? And there's no end to it. There's no conclusion. And so that is what hooks you in. And I wish all history teachers taught history that way. Because as an adult, I've learned that. I've learned so much history through reading historical fiction. So yeah, I totally agree.
Well, we have a couple of questions here from people, and we only have a couple minutes left. Facebook user asked, what you know now that you wish you knew as an author just starting out?
That I'm not very smart. But it's going to take me a really long time. It's way harder than I think. And that it's lonely. That I am going to find out that being published is satisfying for like a minute and a half. And the rest of it is just loving this crazy making process. Like, if you've ever been in labor and had a child, while you're in labor, it's awful. And then after you've had the baby and years, not even years, like 5 minutes later, you're looking back on it like it was fondly, like it was awesome. This wonderful thing that I just went through was amazing. And it was horrid. But like, that's what writing is like. And there's magic to it too. The little things that you turn up, it's a mind game. Like, your subconscious is doing all this work, and you're like putting all that into what you're writing, and you won't know it until later. And the thing to me that's magic about it is talking to readers is like, I dream a lot. So I'm always trying to tell my husband about my dreams, and that man does not care. Like, he does not care. He listens, but he didn't care. And when you've written a book, it's like you've had a dream and you hand it to somebody else. They read it, they have the dream too. And so now you get to talk about it and you both care. And so it's like amazing. Yeah. We had this dream. Can you believe? That part of it makes you keep writing.
That was great.
Someone else asked, what made you interested in writing?
Because nobody listened to my dream. No. Kind of true though, like that you're thinking about the world and you want somebody else to think about it with you. It's a way to connect with people. I never thought I would be a published writer. I think it seems like I'm going to be a rock star, or I'm going to be the next Marilyn Monroe. It's just not very likely. And my dad always said, make sure you have insurance. Get a job that gives you insurance. And this was not going to do that. So, but when I look back at the choices I was making, I was always storytelling one way or the other. When I was teaching, I was a theater major. When I was doing anything in my life, up until I sat down, I was writing really bad poetry and stuff. And in high school, I was writing for language arts fairs and winning stuff, but that didn't mean that would be a job. And I think I stumbled into that aspect of it. But I have always been a storyteller. It's how I make sense out of things around me. And I just think that that's part of most people. It's just a matter of whether or not you want to sit and make yourself crazy doing it.
You have a unique voice, and I have to say, it's just an absolute delight talking with you today.
Thank you. I'm glad you like my mini pearl accent. I got to do something fun. So they recorded that audiobook, by the way. I'll tell you that because I mentioned it earlier. So you're terrified if you have a Southern book coming out that they're going to have this audiobook narrator that sounds like this and is just, makes you insane to listen to. And I always think, man, I wish Dixie Carter was still alive. But they found this girl. I didn't know her or anything about her. And I was so afraid to listen to it. And when I did, I was not unhappy.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
And so it just makes you afraid, though. And so I was really thrilled that she sounded authentic to me. And so I had no contact with her at all until Audible picked it like for something as one of the audiobooks they were excited about for the season. And I sent her a DM on Instagram and just told her that. Thank you. Did a beautiful job. You sound great. And I didn't say I was scared to death to listen to her, but I thanked her. And she said, well, thank you. I'm actually from the South. And I said, so where are you from? And she said, North Carolina. I said, oh, really? I lived in North Carolina for a little while, but she's barely 30 years old, y'all. She cannot be any older than that. And I said, but I guess you probably were a little girl while I was there. And I said, it's funny, though, while I was there is when I learned about the Dare Stones. So that's when I first started thinking about this book and writing my first little notes about it. And I said, so when were you there? And she was telling me. And I said, and where did you grow up? She said, I was in Cary, North Carolina.
Oh, my gosh.
That is where I lived.
Oh,
that is
my
where I was
gosh.
living, right outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. Yep. So we were in the same place. Isn't that funny?
That is what a great story.
I know. And I'm like, okay, Eleanor. So maybe you're not mad at me.
That is so neat. Love it.
And then when they recorded the audiobook, they forgot to record my author's note.
Oh,
so guess who got to go record the author's note a few weeks ago?
Oh, very cool.
Sure. So I don't know when that file will be updated, but if you've already purchased the audiobook, I think it automatically updates. I don't know. I don't read.
It should automatically update.
It wasn't in the version I listened to.
So hopefully it will be updated at some point with me reading it. So go back and check. That was
Very
so
neat.
cool, though. I'd go do that all day long. It was fun.
That's fun. Neat.
Oh, that's so great.
Man, I wish we could keep talking to you for another hour, but we're almost out of time. We just have a couple minutes to finish up. So thank you so much, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was so fun.
Thank you so much for coming.
Bye.
Kimberly.
Thanks.
I want to reread it now.
I have to go get the River Witch now.
Oh,
Yeah,
it
for sure.
is so good. It's so good. It's one of my all-time favorite books.
Oh,
So
I'm excited to read it.
But,
Neat.
Speaking of books, let's we have 2 minutes to do our
Oh,
you know,
do you want me to do the
Go
question?
Sharon. Go
I
Sharon.
think you have some
Okay.
questions for us that
Okay.
might give us a hint about next month's book.
About next month's book and about who each one of us is. I'm going to ask tell you what the question is, what the answers are, and you have to match us to it in the poll in the Facebook group. Okay. So the question is, what is the worst job you've ever had? Who of us was a waitress at a sleazy bar where really nasty things happened? Who of us had worked the midnight shift at a nursing home? Who of us was a cashier at Kentucky Fried Chicken? And who of us babysat for a New York Giants football player? So here we go. We'll put the poll into the Facebook group, and then you all can decide which one of us had the worst job.
And our read for June is
Oh,
Love's
thank you,
Last
guys. I'm
Kiss by
so-
Sharon Wray. We're so
I
excited. Yes.
know.
I'm
Oh,
excited
man,
to
I
get a
can't
month off
wait.
of reading.
We're super excited.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you,
really
everyone,
looking
for joining us.
Thank you.
And I will offer some giveaways during the month in the group. So
Oh, fun.
yeah.
Okay, fantastic. All right, and we'll pick our winner from this live stream on Sunday. Good night,
Perfect.
everyone.
Thank you, everybody, for coming.